The challenged are the chosen. I don't know about you, but I want to see what this means. Come and join us live on Uplift. Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Uplift, uplifting conversations that set your heart on fire. G'day, my name is 𝗖𝗵𝗹𝗶𝗲𝗃. I'm an art therapist, a coach, a lover of life, a nature lover. And hey, I'm your co-host for today. And joining me, as per usual, my lovely co-host from Canada, this is Mr. Neil Thrussell.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Sarah. And I'm really excited to have Nita back on the show. We tried to do this 2 weeks ago, and there was so much depth and wonderful sharing going on, and we had horrific audio. So I am so glad that she carved out some time in her schedule to make this work. So thankful that you're here with us again, Nita.
Thank you for having me on again, guys. I appreciate the opportunity. It's always nice to come and powwow with good people, good vibes.
Oh, we appreciate you, and we appreciate your vibes. And hey, I'm not going to say what we were talking about in the green room, but I appreciate those too. Now,
those other things about me.
Now, Nita's joining us from America, and she's a pretty powerhouse human. You know, not only is she fit physically, she's also rather fit mentally. And you know what? She's over the last few years, I've seen her help and develop so many different people, including herself and her business. Now, Nita, if we were just to get to know you a little bit, I can see there's On the Mark Unedited behind you. For the people who are watching this live and in replay, can you explain what On the Mark is?
Yes, On the Mark is, it's an LLC. It's the holding company for On the Mark Unedited coaching services and On the Mark Jumpsuit, which is a fashion retail line. I designed a jumpsuit that makes women's lives easier, as well as making them feel beautiful and powerful. So the whole idea behind the jumpsuits was really to be an empowerment brand for women with retail products that simplified their lives. Because let's face it, we're in a different world now. We're not staying at home all day and vacuuming and cooking and, doing everything for everybody else. We actually live lives for ourselves. And when you're doing that, and you are raising a family sometimes, and you are, managing perhaps a relationship or a marriage, and then you have maybe a career or even a business of your own, women like that tend to be more minimalistic, where we want to be stylish and cute and cool and sexy and hot and all that stuff that we like about ourselves, but we don't want to complicate our lives doing it. So I created this jumpsuit in order to serve that community of women that was much like myself or yourself, Sarah, where we just want to be on the go, but we still want to be cute and we want to be comfortable. But not have to complicate our lives to do it. So that's what the jumpsuits are about. And there's a gimmick with my jumpsuits. They're great quality. I definitely serve a higher end community in terms of the income bracket, because they're not cheap. They're made with very high grade materials. It's a really high quality developed and produced product. But then on top of it, it's patented. So when you have to use the ladies' room, what's the number one nightmare when you wear a one piece is like you're in the bathroom doing this and it's like, So I wanted to create something that really simplified the process of restroom access with a one piece. So I created what's called a drop cut. So when you have to go to the restroom, you just pop that down and do your business and then pop it right back up. So it's easy drop cut is.
So good.
That's the jumpsuits. And then the coaching services, as you said, Sarah, I've worked with many people over the years. When it came to being a personal trainer and a nutritionist, I was also an athlete and a dance choreographer. I also did stage preparation coaching to help people get ready for their stage presentations, posing, showcasing their body lines, dance choreography, fitness choreography, bodybuilding routine choreography. There were so many different variations that I got the opportunity to serve people through, and got an opportunity to develop my expertise in that. Over the years, just being able to shape the way that I coached people in those areas, along with the emotional side of those that accompanies all those types of trainings. I liked the opportunity that I had to serve and also hold space for people, help them feel safe, help them feel genuinely supported, and offer them tools for that support to utilize on their own when I was no longer there. So I coupled all that together, or combined, I should say. It's more than two things. I combined all those things together eventually to create On the Mark Unedited through the Champion System, my coaching program, the Champion System. So that's an 8-pillar system where I help people execute their lives as champions. And so that's where I take everything that I just talked about, everything having to do with confidence, nutrition, fitness, and of course, life skills, everything that helps you on an emotional side, a spiritual side, to just really walk out into the world like the champion that you really are, fully self-expressed. So that's what On the Mark Unedited coaching is.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that explanation. I trust that everyone's face who heard that lit up, because they could hear your passion and enthusiasm. Plus, they could understand from what you've shared. You've got a great deal of history in that market for one reason or another, helping people in so many different ways. And I personally love how you've sort of combined, or not sort of, you've combined all of it into this beautiful one coaching package that really does transform lives. So from me to you, proud of you. And from everybody else who's curious about wearing your stuff, go get one. They're super comfy. Hey, Neil, are you going to be wearing one of Nita's jumpsuits anytime soon, or are you thinking more Tina?
I'm not going to be wearing one publicly, but for the benefit of Tina, who there's not a restroom in any building that I don't think she has not been into. So she regularly and frequently is in the bathroom. The jumpsuit sounds perfect for her.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, yeah, I think it would be perfect for your wife. I think it would be a little more complicated for you, except for if you were, using the other side. But yeah, I do actually. It's funny you asked him. That's comical, but in part also a little prophetic, Sarah, because I am developing a men's product. It won't be out for probably another 2 years. I'm launching a marketing campaign with Hearst Media, which is their global media services company. So I'm launching a campaign later this month, and they're going to roll us through all of 2023 with the campaigns that we do with them. And I suspect that as we roll out more products for the women, we are going to go ahead and roll this one product out for men, which I can't unleash right now because it is going to be patented as well. But we have a technology that also allows for more comfort and more accessibility when you guys are using the restroom and needing to also feel secure. So I have a great opportunity for men in the market to come soon too.
So that means doesn't matter who you identify as, when you go to the bathroom in a few years' time, your clothes aren't going to be on the floor. You're not going to be covering yourself in one way or another, protecting yourself from people who look through the gaps in the toilets. But also, more than anything else, you're going to feel pretty comfortable in yourself. And, I know how amazing that feels to have that confidence within, from having that external sort of, I look good, I feel good. It's a beautiful cyclical thing that you've developed here. And I trust that it will serve so many people worldwide.
Thank you.
So I'm curious, can anybody sort of get into work with you, or do you have a specific area that you work with these days?
Well, when it comes to my coaching, I definitely work with more entrepreneurial, executive, types of personalities. I'm currently, I've the last year and a half, I've worked with 2 military men who were both very high officers in their respective uniforms. And they, it's wonderful because as a female coach, as you know, Sarah, in our industry in personal development, generally female coaches work with women. There's a lot of hurdles to overcome typically when a woman's guiding a man. And so it's typically such a an odd trajectory, I'll say, filled with a lot of potential conflict that a lot of people just don't step on that grounds. I really enjoy working with women and men. I love that I get the opportunity to support these really robust personalities. They're definitely all alpha personality types, people who are high achievers, people who've already really accomplished a lot in their lives, but at the same time, they're maybe missing some of the parts of serving themselves that they've done so well to serve the world and their respective careers or achievements with. And, that's something that's really important to me is, addressing the idea that these people are so strong that I get the opportunity to work with, but that both women and men who are really strong alpha personality types, what I think fails to be ever examined about these personality types is, and in due part to their own, patterns of exhibiting themselves as such, it appears that they're impenetrable. They're not able to be broken. They're not able to be stopped. And so they have this unimaginable strength and leadership ability. But what people don't understand is the reason they're so strong is because generally at the deepest heart of them, there are traumas that have probably never even been addressed. And if they have been, they were repressed and not quite resolved. And so the counter to that, when you're operating as a human being and becoming a leader, is to become a very strong protective, mechanism, not just for yourself, but for others, which is why they end up in leadership positions often. And being a trauma survivor, as we all are, we know that there are people who survive trauma with, the fight sort of mechanism. And there's people that flight mechanism. And then there's freeze or fawn. And freezing and fawning are kind of the same thing. It's just somebody that's very codependent. Their coping mechanism is, I just want to dote on this person and fix them, very people pleasing. And then there's the flight, which is just like abandon ship, ignore things. People like that have their different types of personalities, but the alpha personality types, they generally are survivors of extreme traumas. And that is where I really find my work the most rewarding, is getting to address things that they maybe don't even realize are still living within them, and getting them to a point where they feel safe enough to work through it and safe enough in their own skin. And that's what people don't understand, is that somebody that's a great leader, that's a very mighty personality, oftentimes does not even feel safe in their own skin while they're protecting everybody else.
Yeah, I can see that happening, and I know that I've witnessed, like the fat kid who'd been picked on go on that transformation journey to suddenly become really buff, and he's, got a bit more of a protection happening here with his outfit. And then the next step for them would be to get into some sort of personal development. So along the way, it sounds like, whether that person's had like a history of trauma, like with drugs and alcohol, like you've experienced with your family, or if they were bullied at school, or however they got to that stage. Would you sort of say it's like peeling an onion, like they've sort of taken off their outside layers and they're ready to go that next level to really get to the core of what they're working on?
I would say without a doubt, I think that for any trauma survivor, that's generally the analogy that we all use that are in personal development and therapy solutions is, you're peeling the layers back. I always call it, but yeah, peeling an onion. But I think with the personality types that I work with, it's more, what I tell people is, in my program, we have 3 stages. It's a 3 to 6 month program that people can work with me in when they're in my one-on-one. I'm about to release my second course in the champion system. We have the foundations course available online right now, and then I'll be releasing the second course in about 3 weeks. So it'll be ready by the new year. And then we'll be releasing further curriculum within the first quarter of next year. But when I work with people in 3 to 6 months, the first leg of my program is just priming the nervous system for the shift. What a lot of personal development tends to ignore is that there is a lot of priming that needs to happen before you even start NLP and doing all this. It's like doing NLP on somebody that hasn't been primed for that type of engagement is like being an electrician and going into an old dilapidated house with bad wiring and just adding in new wiring and leaving all the old shit there. It makes no sense. So there's this misnomer that like, okay, well, I'll do NLP and it'll be better forever. You have to hardwire that. Just because you create the switch in an instant, which is possible, it's very true, does not mean that that's a lasting change. Transformation takes time. It takes repetition. It takes diffusing old wiring and dispensing old patterns, and those patterns don't just take place in one part of the body or just in the brain. It's the brain to the nervous system to the cells. So you're talking about a biofeedback loop. You're talking about a trajectory that's happened in this person's body, brain, and nervous system for literally sometimes their entire lives. So when it comes to NLP or any kind of therapy, talk therapy, it's just all of that is great, but by itself, it's just kind of useless. You really need a multimodal approach. So the first step in my system is to always prime the nervous system. The second step is to synergize the brain-body connection. And the third level is where the neurons have shifted activity levels, and we're diffusing old neural nets, building and hardwiring new neural nets. And as we do that with some of the curriculum and tools that I implement in my system, then people will start noticing a shift in their outer world, because as you change your neural net activity, you change the brain waves that emit from you, and your brain waves are a result of what's going on in your brain. Well, it's not just, we can say it's thoughts, but on a scientific level, on the most very basic level, it's chemical. You have neurochemicals in your brain that are enacting these thoughts, or that are emitting as a result of you going in the direction of these thoughts. And the more you hardwire these new ones and diffuse the old ones by not necessarily trying to diffuse them, but by just not enacting them, they tend to atrophy, and the new ones start to hardwire. So you do change the brainwave activity. And as that brainwave activity shifts, you change the signal that you're putting out. And we do live in an energetic world. Everything out here is subatomic, and the subatomic particles of situations, opportunities, people's conversations, people in general, things that you want, those subatomic categories collect according to the signals that are being emitted from each of us in our own consciousness. So that would be the third leg of my program. So it's 3 tiers, but it's 8 different pillars. And then we have a series of tools that we use along with all my curriculum that I've developed over literally the last 30 years.
Nice. I love that, how the science behind it. It's not just I'm putting this together. There's a real science to this. And I think that so many people don't understand the depth and the gravity of the situations. Now, we do have a viewer question that I will pop back up on the screen. The question is there a correlation between early childhood trauma and military or other aggressive or authoritarian positions? Now, what's your perspective on this, Nita?
Well, I would have to do a study on literally every military person in the world, but it would seem, based on my experience, that childhood trauma will often have something to do with somebody's leadership position. People that are fighters, that are overcomers through fighting, they've learned to fight to survive through things. They go into alpha personality positions, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in the military. I don't know any military leaders who are not alpha personality types. I've never seen one. I've never met one. I've never actually even heard of one. So I would imagine that a good portion of those personalities were not necessarily raised, especially if we're talking like 40 and over. That was kind of a tough generation to grow up in. That's when you got your ass beat. You didn't just get things addressed on time out and have healthy conversations. That's when the neighbors could beat your butt. That's when you could get paddled at school. And a lot of people think that time in our history of, the way that we address children's needs and disciplinary issues. A lot of people think that that was appropriate. I personally think that it's responsible for a lot of the trauma and a lot of the competitive unhealthiness that we see in adults in our world today in that particular generation. So I would say that, yes, there's a good chance that there's a correlation of childhood trauma to leadership in military or any position. But at the same time, I would also say that in this generation, I do see that there's a big shift happening. We're going through a lot of really what seems like wonky, weird things. But in this particular generation, you're seeing a lot more communication. You're seeing a lot more acceptance with parents who are not necessarily needing to control their children's destiny. They're open and receptive to letting their children be co-creators in that destiny versus how it was when we were little, where it was like, just do what you're told. Children are seen, not heard, and listen to your parents or you're going to get your butt beat. And that's that, period. Or listen to adults. So I think that it's shifting, but yeah, 100%. I would think that there would be a correspondence between the two. I would feel that it's an anomaly that you have parents that don't necessarily, in our generation, didn't necessarily traumatize their kids, but they groomed them with healthy leadership tools to go out into the world with. Once in a while, you meet a leader like that, and those are good people because they've been groomed, like I said, with healthy tools. But I don't think those tools were available in our generation of parents.
It would depend to where you are in the world. Yeah, that's a rather broad statement. And obviously we're talking about people who are our age, 40s, 50s, 60s, who did grow up in a very different environment to that which the children of today are. But I do feel like there's a difference in the way that different countries were raised, and even within the country, like different suburbs within said country. I know, for example, that there would be a lot of trauma transference in amongst lower class society people, and unfortunately that's where you see a lot of splits in parents in the formative years. You see that rich kids, their parents will probably split in high school, right, or maybe even beyond. The lower socioeconomic areas, they do split early. They are absolutely, unfortunately they see a lot more. And then that transfer, they want to find someone who's stable, and I know that, the work that I've done and the research that I've had and the amazing research that's gone is particularly to art therapy. I know that I can touch on that very nicely because art therapy helps people with trauma, and they specifically started using it in the Western world with people about 130 years ago, return to war vets. So people who come back with PTSD and a whole lot of trauma, and they just couldn't talk. They just couldn't live like they did before they went to war for obvious reasons, right? So as they've come back home and they're actually able to process stuff, the research shows not only are they processing what they dealt with in that volatile situation when they're in war, but they're also unpacking the volatile situations when they're at war within themselves or within their family, that stuff that you were talking about before. And there is someone who asked us before and says, thank you so much for asking that viewer question. And I think it's the same person with a follow-up question.
I just need to interrupt. I'm just lost back that Nita included me in her generation because I'm a heck of a lot older. So I'm just like, oh.
Well, I would say honestly, when could that trauma transfer into public policy, behavior, and general consciousness? I absolutely think that it would. I mean, it translates into whatever venue that particular person carries it into if they have not healed it. And I use the word healed, but I use it gently because I think that there are many other words that we could use. Aside from healing, transmuted is another word, resolved, dissolved, diffused, dismantled, and dispensed. For myself, I can speak on myself just to address that question in a really direct fashion about somebody that I have firsthand knowledge about. For me, I was on my own at 13. My mother was a crack and heroin addict. I was extremely abused growing up. I had 6.5 years that my mother was married. The molestation that I experienced throughout that marriage started before the marriage even began, and it was a 6.5 year marriage. So I went through 6.5 years plus of molestation. Then I was raped twice during my teenage years. You couple that with constant beatings, constant verbal berating, spiritual abandonment, and ridicule, constant ridicule. And you definitely have a good chemical concoction of trauma that if that person's a fighter, which I was, you better believe that if those traumas are not resolved or dismantled and dispensed, it's going to translate. And I was a very good mother. And I addressed this specific to the point of the public policy and otherwise. I was a good mother. I was a very loyal, dedicated mother, and I loved my kids, and there was nothing I wouldn't do to protect them. But I went through years of not addressing these issues and trying to just get through things. I was the national fitness champion. I was 2-time Miss Fitness Arizona. I was on the news all the time. By all standards, I was a successful person, and I was a great mom. And my kids were good kids. I raised good kids, but I traumatized the hell out of them, because when you see your protector losing their shit, they can't keep it together when they get looked at sideways by a cashier at a store that did nothing to them. 90% of what I was going off on people for was stuff that I had not realized and dismantled in myself. And only 10% of it was that one moment. I was constantly triggered, and I was constantly controlled by these outer circumstances that people weren't even probably personally attacking me with, but because all I saw was red, because I was in such a fight mode constantly. Yep. That's what my nervous system had been replaying for so many years. That translated into every situation that I was in. And so my kids saw me lose my marbles constantly, even though I was a good protective mother and they were safe and I never abused them. They were safe, but you can't keep your kids safe and then lose your marbles and attack everybody else because you feel like you're being attacked, and then have your kids not deal with some repercussions. And as a family, I'll be open and honest and say that we are going to counseling as a family now as a result of that, because there are things that they now need to heal that I am the cause of. So with that being the case, I think, my trauma translated into what I took the most pride in, which was loving my children and protecting them and never letting the things happen to them that happened to me. And I still traumatized them. And you can have all the best morals and the most well-meaning, loving heart, but if you have not gone in to examine what's going on in your nervous system, if you've been traumatized and you haven't gone into with multimodal treatment to recognize, dismantle, and completely dispense those things or transmute them, whatever you want to call it, you are going to make other people suffer that did not do anything to you. And it's just inevitable. And so, yes, it would translate into public policy. It translated into my public policy. I wasn't a politician, but I was a leader in a lot of positions. And I hurt a lot of people. I took for granted the role that I had in a lot of situations by not understanding the impact that I was having on people. And yes, I agree. Until we heal, the trauma is a charge. Thank you, Suzanne, for saying that. 100% I agree. And what
I love about what you said, Nita, is because I believe that there's two parts of our healing. We need to heal the energetic, and we need to heal the habitual part, the part that we always get, as you used the word trigger, the part that we always get triggered. We need to learn to deal with that behavior, but also energetically, as you had said, that we need to heal those. And it's only when we combine those two, which I've heard that you use in your champion system, is the true healing can occur. Because if I only address one, let's say the habit, I will always energetically get triggered. But or if I just have the energy healed, when I go to the supermarket and that the cashier looks at me through gives me the side eye, I will be triggered. So yes, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's when we heal both and we accept that there's two parts to our healing, or many parts and many layers, and many times we have to go back to the same hurt, to the same trauma, so that I believe we need to do, eventually we may do it, rip the Band-Aid off and peel it off many times, but eventually we need to come back from a place of love and compassion for ourselves and for those that we may have hurt.
And that's where it starts, is with ourselves. I mean, until I was able to forgive myself, there was no forgiving people enough, because I could forgive everybody in the world and be a complete codependent. And then the toxicity of my rage would kick in if I was disappointed, which inevitably, when you're codependent, you're going to be disappointed. That's the whole setup with it. It's like, duh. But nobody knows that when you're codependent. You don't even know that you're codependent. Codependency is an addiction. It's not any different than a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction or a sex addiction or any of that stuff. And that was my chemical concoction. That was my loop, was, I fawned because I had a mother who was abusive. I fawned, I froze and fawned. And then when I got old enough, I started learning how to fight for myself. And then when I was having issues with my mother, I would hit her and we would fight. So I got to that point where I started fighting. And then once that switch kicked on, then as I look back now, when I went through anger management about a decade ago, I started to look back at the patterns, and literally every relationship, my marriage, any romantic relationship, a couple of my friendships were very much of that pattern. It's like, let me fix this broken winged thing. And when they disappoint me, which inevitably they do, because nobody's fucking wings are getting fixed for me, they're getting fixed in their time, in their way, at their pace. So when they don't do it my way, because I'm the codependent hero, then of course my rage was able to kick in, and I was able to go into that mode and get that chemical fix. So it's like your cells adapt to these patterns, your body adapts to that. So once it doesn't, your body doesn't discriminate and say, hey, that chemical is bad for me, don't do that. It says, hey, that's what you've been giving me for years. Give me some more of that. What the hell are you doing? So then it sends a biofeedback signal back from the cells up through the central nervous system into the brain, and it calls for the neurons. And I mean, literally, like, I know I'm cursing a lot on here. I hope that's not a problem, but you mind fuck yourself. Your body mind fucks your brain and says, hey, whatever. And that's where the temptations come from, and the reasoning and the need to what's the word I'm looking for, to justify all the justifications, and oh, well, if it's this, and then you start telling yourself stories in order to go ahead and justify, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this thing that I know is probably not good for me, but the cells are just calling for it. So then they send that biofeedback signal through the central nervous system into the brain. They mind fuck you. And then the brain's like, fuck it. And then it just goes into its mode, and you get that flood, that rush. And it's just like hitting that first crack pipe again, that first hit on a crack pipe again for a crackhead. It's no different. And so every time I would go into those cycles, it was just like it was no different than my mother having a crack addiction. And I think that was where the line started to be understood for me when I was in anger management, is like, wow, are you like kidding me right now? I'm like her. I'm just like my mother. And this is what's even funnier. People think that it's funny when I say that. I'm like, no, I literally went through. Have you ever seen somebody, Sarah or Neil, have you guys seen somebody go through withdrawals, chemical withdrawals, like drugs or alcohol? They sweat a lot.
Yeah.
Briefly.
Okay. So yeah, like I used to see my mother when she wouldn't have crack for a couple of days, the sweating, the bed sheets are soaked. They have really bad GI issues. There's a lot of vomiting because the cells are sort of revolting, and the cells are like, the body is like, hey, you're not giving me my thing. Well, when you don't give it the thing, then it goes into this sort of revolting mode. So your body is just, everything's freaking out. So I was waking up when I decided to end the love of my life relationship and get out of that toxic pattern with him. I was waking up because I wasn't raging and I wasn't in a codependent situation. I had cut off every relationship in my life to go into anger management and really focus. And the only thing I had in my life was my kids, my books, and my therapist, and then my 12-step meetings. And I was waking up with sweaty sheets. I was waking up in the middle of the night, puking up yellow stuff, bile. If I had not eaten, I would puke up bile in the middle of the night. I would wake up just like my heart would be racing. I was on Klonopin. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's an anti-anxiety drug when you have anxiety. So I was going through all these things, and I went actually one time into temporary paralysis because the anxiety attack was so bad. And I'm like, I'm supposed to be getting better. What the hell is happening to me? And my therapist was like, you're going through withdrawals. You have been doing everything that I've asked you to do in this program, and you're not doing what you're used to doing. And your body is mad about it. You're going through withdrawals, Nita. And when that hit me and I started to understand, like, this is no different than a drug addiction, it was very humbling. So trauma, in effect, is not chemically not any different other than the chemical values, but chemical pattern wise, it's not any different than somebody who's got a crack or heroin or alcohol or any kind of drug addiction.
So, Nita, we talked about right at the very beginning, we talked about the challenged are the chosen.
Yes.
Is that a good thing, or is that just the way it is? Like, I don't know. Some people I don't think are comfortable to know that they've been challenged because they've been chosen and for bigger, better things. Or what is it that you're, when you say the challenged you're chosen, what is it that you're wanting to share with that message?
My antic is that when you are challenged, you have been chosen, but you still have to choose you. And therein lies the true hero's journey, because when you choose that you've been chosen and you go on that journey and you start doing the work, the growth and the fullness of your self-expression, the authenticity, and the gravity with which you deliver yourself to the world, it becomes very majestic. The impact of your service it's translatable by anyone. It's palatable for anyone. When you really recognize yourself and own yourself for who you really are, and you start to do the work and you start the clearing and the dismantling and the diffusing and the dispensing of all those toxic chemicals and those toxic patterns in your brain, your nervous system, in your body, and you start clearing that stuff out and you get really conscious and really self-aware, it does make you a light being. And I mean, we could start talking, we don't have enough time to go into like the whole idea that we're an electric body and we have electric currencies going through us. And I mean, why, when I say light being, that's representative of again, a scientific facet. So when you think about just what a magical person you're able to transform into, or magical being, I should say, that you're able to transform into, if you had Susie Sweet Girl's Great Life, and your parents clapped for you every time you came in the room, and everybody said go, 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 and you had nothing but support you. I mean, I'm not knocking that. I think that's great. Ideally, that's what we all want to give our children. But here's the thing: if they don't learn to adapt, they don't ever develop one of the most human and most dynamic human traits, which is grit.
That's a good word, isn't it? Yeah.
I love that word.
So grit we've probably heard the word resilience in the news, and it just gets thrown around quite a lot. Is there a difference between grit and resilience in your opinion?
I think resilience is a facet of grit. Grit involves ingenuity. It involves it involves the ability to clearly strategize and streamline your focus in spite of conditions. It's different than resilience in that it encompasses resilience, and resilience is only a fractional component in it. You can really learn a lot about the word grit as it's deemed a psychological term now, more through Professor Angela Duckworth. I think she was from I can't remember where they did her original studies, but she's actually the woman who coined that phrase in the world of psychology today. And the term grit is really, it is more to do with the conditions that somebody has come up from. And she referenced it more primarily to youth who come from, rougher upbringings and harder lives, harsher backgrounds. Most of them tended to be abused of the youth that she studied. But in her work, she studied over, I don't know, I think it was like maybe a decade or 12 years. I could be completely butchering the timelines, but she studied a collection of students and how their lives, their trajectories developed over time. And they had far greater success. They saw a far greater success and overall emotional intelligence with the youth that had come from tattered backgrounds who stayed their course versus the kids that, their parents were basically buying their way through everything. So, you just don't, you don't develop the tenacity, and you're not forced to develop your own intuitive strengths and your own ability to strategize. And those are dynamics that make us great humans. And if you're not ever put into conditions that force you to unearth those things, then why would you? So when I say the challenged are the chosen, I feel like it's more, you are chosen for something. Sorry, my phone should be off. You are chosen for something. And who knows what that is? It's really up to you to decide. And that's what I think is beautiful about that phrase is I'm not telling you what you're chosen for. I'm just saying, hey, if you're challenged, you're chosen. For what? That's up to you. That's
Beautiful.
where the fun begins.
Absolutely.
Neil, I can imagine that you and people that you're around have put it out there to God or to the universe to say, hey, I want my life to change. I want a new job. Maybe, just maybe, they've experienced something like they've lost their job and they've had to do it. How do you relate to what Nita's been saying? I'll give you a moment to finish coughing, hey?
I thought that was a sneeze. I was like, is he about to sneeze? It looked like an about to sneeze.
Okay, so I was too busy coughing. So what was the question once again, please?
So Nita was saying, challenge of the chosen. And I know that as a religious man that, you're around people who believe that, they put it out there to God or to the universe to say, I want this, I want a new job. What would happen in your opinion? Like say someone has put it out there and they want changes, but then, they've been fired and, they've been pushed to get that new job a little bit too quickly for their comfort. How does that sit with you compared to what Nita's been saying about the challenges and being chosen?
I believe if you put it out to whatever faith that you have to let go of timing. You have to let go of what your preconceived notions are about what is coming towards you and just learn to deal. So it fits perfectly within it. If I say I want a new job and maybe I get fired from the first one, and then I have to go out there and then it's maybe desperation or really trying to get out of my comfort zone. So I absolutely firmly believe that, yes, the challenged are the chosen. And if you accept the challenge, it's all from choice. Life to me is when you live from cause or from a place of choice, whatever word you want to use, life is an incredible ride.
Agreed. Well stated.
Yeah.
Well stated.
And what some people don't realize is when you don't make a choice, that still is a choice.
Yeah. You're choosing by default.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's so before, like, oh my gosh, we still have like 15 minutes left, but I want to ask Sarah that I know that a couple days ago or the last day or so, she's posted some fine new things on Facebook, and she's talking about something that's just been given to her. She's been scheming for a while. Tell us what it is, Sarah.
I'm more than happy to share. Hey, you guys known me for a while, and you know that I'm a visual person. You know, I talk visually. Obviously, as an art therapist, I use visual prompts and cues.
Mm-hmm.
And my way of sharing me, my business behind the scenes, and so much more of late has been to use Reels. So I'm curious if you guys are using Reels or if you're watching Reels. I'd love to know, because, you know, you guys spend time with us regularly, and I want to know what works for you. Now, what works for me as a creative and a creator is expressing myself in more ways than just words themselves. So I'm putting together a challenge next week. It'll be for 5 days, and it'll be helping people to get out of their heads and really learn the basics so they can share what works for them. And it's a beautiful thing to witness. I've had so many people reaching out saying, oh, I've been waiting for something like this. You know, you can get put back by seeing someone, doesn't matter who they are, you know, what level they are. If you see someone at their elite making it look easy, you can be overwhelmed by the wow factor that they've got. And I'm not going to live up to their standards. So often I see people don't go in for something, or they start and they don't put it out. So my role in the challenge is to literally hold you in this container, and we work together through issues and literally some of the tech stuff, but also helping you with your mindset to get through to prepare 3 reels for you for December or beyond. So you're in a really good state to share your business and your life going forward and attract more of your ideal clients. My microphone almost went for a jump and a skip then. Glad it didn't. Whew.
Not that you're passionate about it.
I don't know where it comes from. I'm not Italian, but I don't know. But yeah, it almost landed in my water, so I might just hold on to that. But yeah, if you'd like to go and join me and spend some time to create some reels, feel free to just send me your DM, or I will be in touch with you. And honestly, I'd love to know, as a viewer, because most of us are watching short form content now, right? So as a viewer, are you more interested in something that's entertaining, inspiring, or educational? What about you, Nita? Where do you sit on that? What would you prefer to watch? Education, inspiring, or inspiration?
I only watch education. I'm everybody thinks I'm just sourpuss. People ask me, oh, did you ever see that one episode of Friends? Did you ever see that one episode of Science? I've never watched an episode of either of those shows. I have been watching no TV since before either of those shows were out. So I don't watch anything that's really like super entertaining. I might go to the movies every now and then. But yeah, I mean, I just went and saw Black Panther with my kids the other day. And the last movie I saw before that was In the Heights, also with my kids. And the last movie before that was La La Land, also with my kids. So like 3 movies in 5 years.
So when you're putting your content together, do you have somebody who does your video editing and the like? Because that's not your forte.
Yeah. I know how to edit. I don't enjoy it. It's too time consuming. What it takes me 3 hours can take my team like 15 minutes. So yeah, I leave that to an awesome leader in my team who heads up all my editing, and he's great.
So Nita, so you've provided us with some wonderful content, so thank you. But what's the best way for people? Like, I want to know more about your champion system. So do I sit there and look into my crystal ball and just appear, or do I doodle and draw? How do I find out about your champion system?
So I've just put in the chat my link to onthemark.com. So I have 2 different websites. I haven't decided to merge them because of different reasons, but this site is what I recommend to more corporate and group coaching experiences. But what's great about the onthemark.com website is you can go there and do a free champion assessment. It's free. And you can generate your own champion assessment number. I call it a balance assessment number. I don't like to call it a score or a rating because it's not about your proficiency. It's just about your efficiency and how impactful you're being for yourself through these different areas. So you can go and do a free champion balance assessment at onthemark.com. You can learn more about me through there, or you can also go to 𝗓𝗵𝗹𝗲𝗃.com. And both of those sites are going to give you a lot of background on what the champion system is and all of the 8 pillars. But more than anything, you know, I really, really love connecting with people. So if people want to reach out to me and connect, I welcome that. You can book with me on my Calendly, or you can DM me. I'm good either way. I respond to all my emails when they're concerning the champion system. So I'd love to be able to support anybody that I can.
Wonderful. So where did you find it? We only have a few minutes. We have some time. But where do you find your drive comes from? Like, what drives you? You've got 3 beautiful kids. And, like, what gets you up in the morning?
The first thing I do before I even open my eyes is I connect with my breath, and I just feel it all through my body. And I'm like, there you are. And I personify my breath, and I just connect with it. It's a presence to me. And I'm like, wow, thank you for coming. I invite you in. Thank you for coming and sharing yourself with me. Thank you for giving me life again today. It's such a joy to be here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I get really in that gratitude mode. And then I get up immediately and I start meditating. I really think that what gets me up in the morning is I honestly, like, I spent so many years running from the pain. I just have so much love in my heart today. And I think that that's what drives really everything that I do. I have a lot of passion, yes, but I think that that passion is boundless because of the love that I have in my heart. I love myself. I love all of my life, even the pains. And in loving all of it, I feel that I've really transmuted a lot of those old situations into what I consider a charmed destiny versus a cursed past. I really feel so very blessed. I'm very close with my mother now. She's been clean now for 22 years off of crack cocaine and heroin. And we have a beautiful relationship. And, you know, I think that life is such a beautiful miracle, and that's what gets me up every day. I'm just like, wow, I get to be here and do this some more. Yes. And I just want to make it the fullest experience I can. And part of making that full is being able to be of extreme, authentic, and majestic service to others. I really do enjoy the work that I do, both with my jumpsuits and with my coaching. I love it. I love every opportunity that I have in this world.
It's literally flows through you, doesn't it? You know, it's you're breathing it in from first thing in the morning when you're aware of your breath. I imagine through till last thing at night, when I often see you in the gym, like 3 a.m. our time, my time. I don't know what time it is for you, but it's 3 a.m. for me. So I'm thinking you're at the gym at silly o'clock in the morning, but you can see that power really sustains you all day long. And, you know, in those moments when we all have, you know, some self-doubt or some questioning or something go through, I've got a pretty good guess that you've got someone that you lean towards, that you look for support too, right, Nita?
Yeah, I do. Right now, I'm actually, I'm looking for the right alliance in mentorship. I have not found that yet, since my last mentor was my fitness coach back in Arizona when I was doing my competitive career. Tim Sparks. He was my first coach that I ever had in my whole life. And he's really like been the mentor of my life. I mean, I think a lot of what I learned in training as an athlete under his guidance gave me the fortitude and the clarity with which to devise my next opportunities to be of service. I think that everything in the world is a lot like being an athlete. I mean, it requires a level of discipline, which eventually becomes habit, which eventually becomes lifestyle, which eventually becomes ease. And that's what I learned in athletics. And that's what I've translated as a model for my other behaviors. And people say I'm disciplined all the time. I'm like, not really. I had to be disciplined for a long time, but it comes with great ease to me to do a lot of the things that I do that most people consider discipline. I'm like, I'm really not disciplined. I just know what I really value. And I gravitate easily to the things that help me support that.
And that's huge, isn't it? Knowing your values. Neil, I know that we're heading to the end of the show, and I'm sure that you are grateful for a number of things, just like you have the propensity to share your passion in a number of ways. And I'm curious what you would like to leave us with today.
I did a talk yesterday for Unity of Calgary Spiritual Center, and we talked about, I was the minister in front of the pulpit, and I spoke on the duality of life. And duality is a good thing, and it is. Life is duality. And so we can choose in any given moment how we're going to deal with life. Life is going to give us, happiness and puppy dog kisses, and it's going to can give us the negative parts or the sorrowful parts. And I'm choosing to look at life through my own rose-colored glasses, to think that my life is a blessed life, because I am grateful for the people in my life, that I've met Nita, that I have Sarah in my life, that I have so many of our viewers and listeners that actually listen to us and comment. So life to me, even in its times of despair, is still a beautiful, beautiful experience. And I am so blessed to be on this side of the grass to enjoy it.
I love that. No trolls in sight, none that I can see anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that grass is an interesting thing, isn't it? We often, can base our expectations on others' perspectives and what they've shared. And I think, knowing what's on the other side can hinder us at times because of our expectations getting in the way. And it's something that I often help people with. That's been my experience helping people anyhow. Hey, Nita, we are just about to wrap up, and I'd love to hear something from you. How would you like to end the show and to wish everyone all the best?
Wherever it is in your life that you can find the opportunity to genuinely find love for yourself, please make more time for that. Make more energy for that. Prioritize that. Because everything that we do in life, it's translating the level of love that we have for ourselves. And when you have the tremendous amount of love for you that you would have for other people, you amplify what you contribute to those people so much more. That's what I would say.
I love that. And I'll add to that too, if you're ever feeling like you're not being respected by others, maybe just take a step back and notice if you're respecting yourself, because if you're not, maybe that's a clue as to why they're not respecting you. And, to have that self-love is so important. So as we've all spoken about today, we model that to those around us. And we obviously want to do the right thing for our small humans and for people who will be heading down the path as well with us. Mm-hmm. And I love that, in places like, podcasts where you can share uplifting conversations and people come in and ask questions, you can go out and have really curious conversations that really put a smile on your face and help you in the deepest ways. Anyhow, from us to you, we wish you all the best. We look forward to talking to you for our last show just before Christmas in a fortnight. Until then, mwah!
Be good.